This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, 212th Trooper, Silas 1610, Rune Scribble, Legendary Ray Ray, and Kitsu the Kitsune, and brought to you by 212th Trooper who requested this topic. If there is a video you want me to make, just head over to Patreon or become a channel member, and select the Pickled Producer tier, since among other benefits, you'll get to make a video request every month, be it the continuation of an existing series or a brand new story. Also, thanks to Shadow Critias for pointing out something that'll come up later. Now, before we get into today's story, I just want to ask you to do me a favor. Hit that like button, since it tells YouTube you enjoy what I do, and check whether you're subscribed, since only about a quarter of my viewers are, and it's a free way to keep up to date with all my content. In return, I'll do all I can to keep making regular quality content for you. Thanks, and let's hop in. Returning to the heroes, roughly a month has passed since the Naboo Island incident, and Class 1A has settled back into normal student life. For the most part, things have been good, since during their training exercise with Class 1B, they were able to win every matchup, with Izuku in particular proving an essential asset due to his leadership as class rep, allowing him and his group to win with ease. Though, those who know him well couldn't help but notice a strange reluctance to fully make use of his gear and Batman training, despite both having been designed for the sort of urban environment the battle test took place in. Nonetheless, Izuku has continued to improve himself, now with no contact from Bruce since their talk at Wayne Manor, though considering how they left things, that's probably for the best. Following one of these solo training sessions, Izuku returns to the dorms to find everyone gathered around the TV, where some sort of press conference is playing. Joining his classmates on the couch, he is shocked to see a group of villains who call themselves the Metal Liberation Army and who claim to have conquered the League of Villains. From the burnt corpse that is supposedly Himiko Toga's, and the unmistakable form of Tomura Shigaraki frozen in ice, both of which are positioned behind the self-proclaimed leader, Redestro, it seems there is at least some truth to their claim, though more disturbing than that is what they say they're going to do next, as while this edited version of the speech does not directly mention Tartarus beyond a vague allusion to breaking a well-known symbol of oppression, it does still include the declaration of war against hero society. This elicits a variety of reactions from the students, as Sue and Ochako express concern about what the MLA might be scheming, while in contrast, Aoyama looks so happy he might cry, as he rushes off to get his best cheese to toast the downfall of the League of Villains. As for Izuku, he remains quiet, since while he's heard reference to the Metal Liberation Army and their quirk supremacist rhetoric, they'd always been a fringe group, so to suddenly have the confidence and ability to take down the League and announce themselves publicly suggests that they may have become a real threat. Unsurprisingly, Bakugou is just as quick to consider these details, though he comes to the opposite conclusion, asking how stupid these poses have to be to announce their intentions on TV. Now every hero in the country will be looking for them. Nodding, Ida agrees that this was not the sharpest move, though perhaps a lack of foresight is one of the group's weaknesses, since from what he heard, the man who released this video was a politician from the Hearts and Minds Party, and has since been arrested on charges of aiding and abetting villains, and being a villain himself, since he was caught on camera as one of the people with Redestro. Shaking his head a little, Kaminari admits that the guy can't be that bright if he threw away his political career like that, though, if anything, that makes Izuku more suspicious, since that would be unbelievably foolish. That is, unless it's part of a larger plan. The bright fluorescent lights of Tartarus sting Trumpet's eyes without his signature shades to shield them, though unfortunately, they along with all his personal effects are currently stored in a manila envelope back in the property room. As for him, he is in the middle of the tedious intake process, trading his immaculately tailored suit for a drab prisoner's uniform, and standing in place for headshots and fingerprinting, all the while a pair of guards watch him like a hawk. When this is done, he is ordered to follow them to his cell, and having put up no resistance so far, he obeys as they begin leading him down a narrow corridor much like every other one here. Due to being ostensibly a civilian, he is to be housed in the minimum security wing, and figuring it's a waste of time to have two people babysitting such a low-risk inmate, the shorter of his two guards offers to take him the rest of the way, an offer the taller one happily accepts, turning on his heels and heading in the direction of the break room. Meanwhile, Trumpet and his guards start walking once again, though now their demeanor is entirely different, more relaxed, as though they are old friends rather than captor and prisoner. In a low, casual voice, Trumpet asks how the man's wife is, to which the guard brusquely replies that he doesn't have one, with this earning a slight chuckle from the villain as he praises the man for his wisdom. After all, a woman who produced two quirkless children has no place being married to such a promising member of the Metal Liberation Army. Straightening slightly at this praise, the shorter man thanks the lieutenant, before stating that those sympathetic to their cause are ready to mobilize at Redestro's command. Smiling softly that he expected nothing less, Trumpet then informs his subordinate that the journal that was seized with his possessions contains the list of guards and other employees who Skeptic had identified as susceptible to blackmail, along with the details of their individual leverages that he and Curious were able to dig up. Nodding, the guard promises to get to work decoding those at once. Then, as they reach a vacant cell, he ushers him inside. All the while, Trumpet simply smirks and straightens his collar, as he intends to look his best when he stands before Redestro once more. As the sun sets, the Meta Liberation Army begin to march. 15,000 men and women from all walks of life, coming together to form a delegation of liberation. This is the image Curious and Skeptic wish to present as they stand on either side of the Supreme Commander and hold their banners high, while behind them, thousands of homemade signs carry MLA slogans, pleas for justice, and rebukes against hero society. Despite the disparate nature of those assembled, when they move, it is with the synchronicity and precision of an army, making clear that they are not just some rabble that can be ignored. Though right now, it is very unlikely any news outlet in all of Japan is ignoring them, as they make their way through the streets and down towards the bridge connecting the mainland to Tartarus. As expected, a group of police officers try to stop them, though against a group this size they can do very little. Though, even still, the Liberationists take special care not to harm the officers they push past them. Redestro had been particularly insistent on that point. Subsequently, it is not long before they are covering the bridge like a blanket, the sheer number of bodies at their disposal becoming even more evident as they enter this confined space. Good to his name, Skeptic had questioned the wisdom of this, as they are now caught at a choke point, though once more Redestro had insisted, assuring his trusted lieutenant that there is no cause for concern. However, it seems the veracity of this claim is about to be tested, as having been smart enough to understand the allusion to the Great Prison, the Hero Commission had assigned several pro-heroes to stand guard alongside Tartarus' usual staff, with the Supreme Commander being briefly disappointed to see that they did not think his movement merited an appearance from the number one hero. No matter, he still sees several popular figures such as Mirko, Kamui Woods, and Ryukyu, all of whom will be made to serve his purposes before the night is over. Finally, when they are in the shadow of the massive gates, the marchers stop, with Redestro alone stepping forth to address the assembled guards and heroes. All around him, Curious's cameras catch every word and movement, as he assures them that he has not come to wage war on those before him, but to free them. After all, the guards of Tartarus are not his enemies. They are fellow citizens, fellow bearers of meta abilities who have been forced into the shameful role of jailers, keeping their own kind in chains to appease a society that fears power. He then lifts a hand towards the fortress looming before him, stating that behind its intimidating facade, it is a monument to cowardice, a place where those blessed with strength are hidden away rather than celebrated as they should be. Every lock, every bolt, every bar of steel is an insult to what they were born to be. Then his tone softens, almost paternal, as he directly addresses the men and women in uniform, telling them it is not too late. They can step aside, they can walk away and let liberation take its course, and history will remember them as people of conviction, people who chose not to uphold tyranny, as true heroes. At this last word, his voice sharpens while his eyes fall contemptuously upon the assembled pros, as he declares they are anything but. Though the media tries to paint them as protectors, they are nothing more than jackbooted thugs, weapons of a crumbling regime that feeds on fear and convinces people to sacrifice their rights in the name of a false common good. Even now, instead of saving lives, they stand here as tools of intimidation, meant to scare him and his comrades into submission. But liberation does not cower. Liberation does not fear! As one, the crowd begin to take up the rallying cry, so that soon 15,000 voices are screaming in the faces of the heroes and guards, while many wave signs and banners, or else firing off their quirks into the air in a demonstration that society will not restrain their abilities. It is a powder keg just waiting to blow. And then it does, as one of the guards opens fire, their bullet narrowly whizzing past Redestro to strike a foot soldier behind him. At once, all cameras zero in on the shocked and appalled face of the miraculously alive Supreme Commander, though in truth, it is no miracle, as this guard had been yet another of their people inside the prison, though one who will tragically not see sunrise. as such a loose end cannot be left dangling. Likewise, the victim who now lays dying serves as an excellent prop, as in an image that will echo through the ages, Redestro kneels down to hold him close, allowing his perfect suit to be stained with the blood of the common man. Then, as he closes his eyes for the last time, the MLA leader gives the order to attack, now veiled in righteous fury, as it is the oppressors who forced their hand and demanded they meet violence with violence, lest they be killed where they stand for daring to speak out. Hearing this, several guards panic and begin opening fire or making use of their quirks, only strengthening Redestro's pretense, as down below, the MLA prove why they are known as the Meta Liberation Army, forming up and retaliating with militant precision. As Redestro had hoped, this in turn forces the heroes to step in and begin fighting their own citizens, in what will surely make for excellent propaganda footage, as Miriko's kicks inflict half a dozen cases of grievous bodily harm, while Kamui-Wood's lacquered chain prison serves as the perfect metaphor for the system holding down those it is supposed to serve. And then there is Ryukyu, a literal monster descending from on high to crush opposition at the command of the corrupt state. Though, this is not to say that his forces do not put up a fight, as outnumbering the heroes and prison guards dozens of times over, they push back with everything they have, making use of their powerful quirks to strike out at the heroes, and batter the great gates with energy blasts, fists, and even the rain itself, which get and weaponizes into thousands of tiny icy knives. Having never experienced such pushback before, those in charge of security begin throwing the full might of Tartarus at the MLA, employing large mechs like the ones used for training at UA, as well as a squadron of fighter jets that form up with Ryukyu, forcing those among the liberationists who can fight at range to change targets. However, in spite of this attempt to regain control, it is all for naught, as just when it looks like the heroes and guards will be able to quell this riot, their machines go dead, their alarms stop blaring, and the great gates of Tartarus swing open to reveal Trumpet, dressed in his immaculate suit and shades once more, while behind him stands the assembled inmates, now liberated and hungry for some payback on those that kept them chained. Were that not bad enough, a dozen or so guards are also with them, some chanting slogans of liberation as they are finally free to declare their true allegiance, while others follow along nervously, evidently hoping it is enough to stop the MLA from publishing their dirty secrets, or else the addresses of their children. Recognizing they are pincered between the Liberation Army on one side and the Tartarus group on the other, the heroes make the difficult call to retreat, as in their current state they cannot win. With this comes the painful realization they will not be able to evacuate all or even most of the guards, as while Kamui-Woods and Mirko do grab a few of them and Ryukyu ushers some more onto her back, they can only take so many, and with Trumpets and Side Quirk empowering the inmates while a desire to answer blood with blood-inspired liberationists, there isn't time or space to make a plan, so that all they can do is grab who they can and go. Naturally, Curious is quick to capture the hero's flight on camera, as it will be incredibly useful for what Redestro has planned, while those they left behind are promptly defeated, though at the Supreme Commander's insistence they are not killed, instead simply being subdued and laid at his feet. For a moment, Redestro does not speak, simply surveying the scene before him as one of both victory and tragic loss, his eyes and the cameras lingering on the man whose death started the battle. Then, at last, he addresses his vanquished foes. Though, rather than gloat, he adopts a tone of sympathy, reiterating that in spite of their choice to stand against them today, they are not enemies and never have been. Their true enemies are the so-called heroes who would abandon their allies at a moment's notice, who betrayed them and prioritized only themselves. They are emblematic of the rotten society that must be torn away, which is why he asked the guards, who were brave enough to hold the line when the heroes fled, to lend their strength to liberation instead. It will not be easy, and as today's tragedy has shown, will certainly be costly, but it is a price worth paying for a liberated future where all are free. This is what his movement stands for, which is why he must make it clear that his invitation to join is not a demand, nor an ultimatum, since unlike the society that cages those who do not bend to their will, the Meta Liberation Army values freedom above all else. To this end, they may stay or go as they please with no fear of reprisal. He asks only that they remember what happened here today. With this, the captured guards are unbound and allowed to stand, with most beginning to file out towards the mainland, though a few do stay behind, joining the crowd of liberationists, where they are welcomed with open arms by those who were previously their opponents. As for those who had come from inside Tartarus, they are also integrated into the army, with Redestro striding forth to meet Trumpet and embrace them like a prodigal brother returned. All the while, cries of victory ring out across the bridge. Having achieved exactly what they came here to do, the MLA prepared to depart, with Redestro once more at the head of the triumphant army, though it seems the battle is not yet over, as having seen the coverage of the march and subsequent riot, Endeavor now lands at the end of the bridge, his eyes still mostly hollow, though the embers of rage are also visible. In a voice full of loathing, he announces that he's putting an end to Redestro's plans here and now, since he's seen where their unfettered quirklust leads, and he will not allow it to take hold. Surprisingly, the appearance of the number one hero does not elicit any fright from the Supreme Commander or his inner circle, as while Gatton does step closer to provide cover against the man's flames, Redestro remains as calm as ever, even agreeing that Endeavor would be the expert on that matter, or at least, his children certainly believe he is. At these words, Skeptic presses a button on his phone, and at once every television in Japan bursts to life, each showing the same thing: security camera footage from the League of Villains bar. From the date in the bottom corner, this was taken on the night of the Kamino tragedy, when All Might, All for One and Darby died, though Endeavor knows this without having to look at the numbers, as the central figures on screen are Shoto bound to a chair, and Darby, or rather Toya, sporting his natural white hair once again. Though this sight is only the beginning of the Flame Hero's horror, as the recording of Toya begins to speak, and more specifically to lay bare all of Endeavor's sins, from his abusive quirk marriage and eugenic creation of his children, to his destructive parenting characterized by brutal training and then neglect should the child not live up to his hubristic ambitions. It is a damning testimony, and perhaps worst of all, when it comes time for the recorded Shoto to respond, he does not deny any of it, turning his accusations from the ravings of a mad mass-murdering villain to a claim confirmed by Endeavor's chosen heir and an aspiring pro-hero to boot. All this at once proves too much for the man who had only just begun to reignite his heroic spark, so that as the villain comes to an end, he falls to his knees, while his flames gutter out and die, allowing the army to pass him without resistance. Unable to ignore a chance to hammer his message home, Redestro alone approaches the broken man, coldly cupping his chin so that the number one hero cannot hide his face from the cameras, while in a voice of deepest scorn, he asks if this is the man Hero Society means to anoint as their new symbol, a man whose cruelty and ruthless ambition destroyed his own family. And if that is so, then what does it say of the society that raised and lionized him? He has to wonder, how many other so-called heroes are the same, presenting a hypocritical facade of goodness to the public and terrorizing their own loved ones behind closed doors? All the while, a corrupt hero commission complicitly covers it up. Just the thought breaks his heart and sickens him to his stomach. In that moment, his anger crests, and his composure seemingly falters, as without warning, his hand lashes out, almost of its own accord to slap Endeavor across the face, in a crack that echoes up and down the bridge. For a second, the image is raw and unpolished, the Supreme Commander overcome not by triumph, but by outrage so fierce he can scarcely contain it. Yet, even this serves the cameras, as to the watching world it is not the cruelty of a tyrant or a bully, but the eruption of a man who feels the injustice of society so strongly that he cannot always restrain himself. Though never one to present a lack of control, even if it is only for show, Redestro quickly appears to regain his faculties, stepping away to rejoin his comrades, while the number one hero kneels alone, utterly broken and humiliated, with the mark of the downtrodden's champion still burning on his cheek. In the days that follow, this encounter, along with the breakout at Tartarus and the League hideout footage, are played ad nauseum, as every journalist attempts to understand what happened, and most crucially, whether the Meta Liberation Army may have more validity than initially suspected. As part of this, public inquiries are held, in which members of the Commission along with several pro-heroes are made to answer for everything, from the infiltration of the supposedly impregnable prison by the MLA to Endeavor's abuse of his family. While Bruce is not one of these heroes, he does return to Japan, having already been inbound since, like Izuku, he had suspected something was amiss with Trumpet's arrest, and while he had been too late to prevent the Liberationist scheme, that is not his only business in the country, as it seems the time has finally come to follow up on his plans for All Might's funeral and have a private chat with Enji Todoroki. As Endeavor has not been seen in public since the incident on the bridge, Bruce does not need to waste any effort searching for him, instead descending upon the Todoroki family compound and employing his characteristic stealth to make his way inside. From here, he needs only follow the sound of running water adjacent to the master bedroom to find the man finishing up a shower that he perhaps hopes will wash away his shame. When this proves to be a vain effort, he begins reaching for a towel, with Bruce being quick to oblige, handing it to the new number one, and then bluntly telling him to get dressed since they need to talk. 5 minutes later, the two men reconvene in what once may have been a family room, but which now reeks of disuse, as Endeavor coldly states that he imagines Batman's here to ask if that video was real. Pursing his lips in a slight scowl, Bruce retorts that he was part of the raid, so he knows that at the very least Shoto and Toya were in that bar. What he wants to know is how much of what the boys said is true. Letting out a low growl that carries none of his old fieriness, Endeavor flatly states that it's all true, every word. For a moment, Bruce lets this hang, allowing the other man to give any rationalization he might feel is necessary, though when the fallen number one does not, the Dark Knight recognizes this is a man like himself, one who seeks no excuses or forgiveness since he knows he doesn't deserve it. Verbalizing none of this, Bruce instead asks what Endeavor plans to do next, and when the Flame Hero shrugs as if to question whether anything can be done, the American states that he can start by making amends. It won't wipe away his sins, and it may ultimately end in failure, but perhaps in time he'll be able to look at himself in the mirror again. Having learned what he came here to and said what needed to be said, Bruce then rises to his feet and prepares to leave, though before he goes, Endeavor calls out to his cowled back, asking if that's why he didn't take the hair back at Kamino, his own sins. Once again, the Caped Crusader pauses, then, after giving an almost imperceptible nod, he vanishes into the night. Returning now to Class 1A, they are greeted with some rather surprising news the following morning. Their work-study program is starting up again, effective immediately, as in the wake of the Tartarus breakout and the public outcry against heroes, a lot of the pros are hanging up their capes, or worse, declaring openly for the Metal Liberation Army, as more and more people are coming around to their way of thinking every day. This has created a sudden need for more heroes on the streets, though the problem is, how many agencies will be able to take on work-study students when they can barely keep their own heads above water during this upswell of dissent? Fortunately, Izuku and Ochako have no such problem, as when class is finished for the day, Eri is there to greet them and let them know that Mr. Bruce is back in Japan, so they can come over to Wayne Tower whenever they're ready. Smiling broadly at the younger girl, Ochako states that she'll be happy to walk over with her if she can wait a minute, though in contrast, Izuku feels slightly queasy, since the sight of Eri speaking so excitedly about Bruce only reminds him of those bullets. Telling the pair of them to go ahead without him, the green-haired youth then ducks into the men's room to splash some water on his face, as while he had known that he would have to see Bruce again since he did agree to continue being Batman, it is still a thought he does not relish, as he has not yet forgiven his former hero. Evidently, something of this apprehension must have shown on his face, as from beside him, a voice asks if he's okay, and turning to look at the speaker, he sees Todoroki washing his hands. Not wanting to burden others with his problems, Izuku hastily replies that he's fine, before quickly looking to change the subject as he asks what Shoto intends to do for his work study. Sighing slightly, the two-toned boy admits that he had been planning to continue with his father, but in the wake of the Tartarus incident, the Endeavor Agency has more or less gone out of business, with most of his staff and sidekicks jumping ship while he refuses to turn up for work. Gulping loudly since he's pretty sure he just made things worse, a very sweaty Izuku states that surely one of the other pros must have extended an invite, considering he won the sports festival. Nodding, Todoroki states that the new acting number one hero Hawks actually texted him this morning and invited him to work for him, though he's not sure why, since there isn't much synergy between their quirks, which is normally something pros look for when taking on sidekicks. Shrugging since he doesn't know either, though he doubts it's for any nefarious purpose, Izuku asks if the other boy intends to take the offer, to which Shoto nods, since while he wasn't sure before, talking with Midoriya has helped him figure out a plan, so he's grateful. Smiling that the scarred youth can talk to him anytime, Izuku bids him goodbye, then, after drying his own hands, heads back out, since it's time to face Bruce. When he arrives, Ochako and Eri are already there, or rather, Eri is playing with Dick, who had accompanied Bruce back to Japan, while Ochako is in a meeting with the man himself. Having a feeling he knows what this is about, Izuku braces for his friend's reaction, though he can't help but be a little pleased, since he had half expected Bruce to use the current crisis as a pretext to putting off keeping his promise and telling Ochako about his past. Just as when Bruce told him, the Gravity Girl looks remarkably shaken when she emerges from the conference room 10 minutes later, and as Izuku rushes to check on her, she assures him that he doesn't have to worry about her. She's fine. Nodding sympathetically, the green-haired boy then asks the most crucial question: what does she plan to do? Fixing with a determined stare, Ochako replies that if he can stick around after learning that, so can she. Though, like she told Mr. Wayne, she's not staying for him. She's staying for Eri and for Izuku, since if he starts falling back on his old ways, they'll be the ones that get hurt, so she'll be watching out for that, and for them, they can count on it. Smiling that he's always known he could count on her, Izuku then joins Dick and Ochako as Bruce bids them all come in, since it's time they discuss their patrols, though here all smiles die, as when the boy catches sight of the man who had once looked up to as a mentor, his jaw sets, and he greets him with cool professionalism. Having expected this, Bruce does not give away any signs of hurt or disappointment like he did during that vulnerable night in Wayne Manor, instead keeping his bare-faced cowled in neutrality as he goes over the situation. Since their agency is located in Kamino Ward, they're expecting higher than usual villain activity, as a lot of the Tartarus escapees want to see the place where Darby, All Might, and All for One died, some to pay their tribute to the fallen villains, and others in the hope of outdoing them and making their own mark on history. Either way, he wants comms open at all times and frequent check-ins, though, just to be safe, they're also going to be working in pairs to prevent ambushes, with Ochako accompanying Dick while he'll partner up with Izuku. This comes as something of a surprise to the younger Batman, since considering the fact Bruce has spent a month avoiding him, he'd have expected him to go with one of the others, though having no valid reason to refuse, he accepts, joining Bruce in the Batmobile, while Ochako climbs onto the back of the wing cycle behind Dick. Then, the two pairs set off, with a rather uncomfortable silence falling inside the Batmobile, as neither Bat-themed hero is quite sure where to begin. Finally, after about 20 minutes of driving, Izuku breaks the silence as he attempts small talk, asking where Bruce has been for the last few weeks. Unfortunately, this comes out more like recrimination than the boy had intended, though either missing this or choosing to ignore it, the Dark Knight reveals that he's been in Italy, dealing with the Galini crime family, since they've recently been looking at expanding into America and Japan, so he felt the time had come to nip that in the bud before they became yet another problem on top of the MLA. In a tone almost like the one he used to have when seeking his mentor's wisdom, Izuku asks how much of a threat Bruce thinks the Liberationists truly are, and seeing no point to sugarcoating it, the older Batman replies that they are currently a high-level threat, though if left unchecked, they could become a greater menace even than All for One. For one thing, their cult-like devotion to Redestro makes them dangerous, especially since he has convinced his followers they are changing the world for the better, and they both know what atrocities a person can do in the name of that goal. At this reminder, Izuku sits lower in his chair, though evidently having more to say, Bruce continues the other major threat that they pose as their ideology, as underpinning the rhetoric of quirk liberation is an unspoken belief in quirk supremacy, and that those with powerful quirks deserve greater status and privilege in society. So where does that leave quirkless individuals such as them? Knowing the answer, though it pains him to think it, Izuku responds that at best they will become an underclass, unable to rise beyond the status of their birth, and forever at the mercy of those more powerful than them, and at worst, they will be deemed a blight on this new supposedly perfect quirk society, and so removed through selective breeding and genocide. Sighing deeply, Bruce states this is exactly correct, which is why they need to stop the MLA before they can seize control of society. To that end, he has struck a deal with someone inside the army's ranks who also wants to see them brought down, though just because they have common cause does not make them an ally. Having a feeling he knows what his patron is alluding to, Izuku asks if this person is a villain, to which Bruce nods, before revealing that they are on their way to meet them now, since he promised the boy transparency, so here it is. At these words, the Batmobile pulls to a stop in front of a seemingly deserted alley, though as Izuku looks closer, he spots a figure rise from among the refuse. While he looks more gaunt than when they last met, and he is missing his distinctive mask, the boy has no trouble recognizing this man, since as long as he lives, he will never forget the face of Kai Chisaki. And that's where we'll leave things for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage in the comments below.